Hi guys, there's no photograph with this video because I actually did the drawing live on site. I was in a little fishing village called Stace. There was lots of cobbled streets, very narrow roads, lots of boats and things. And this is the only sketch I got to do on my iPad. I was with Special K, was on holiday. I did take hundreds of photos, but I didn't get a lot of time to actually do some sketching, and I had to make it a quick one. So what I want to show you is how I use the watercolour brushes in Tayasui Sketches to emulate using an aquarelle pencil, watercolour black soluble pencil, to add shading to a drawing really quickly. And you can do this with conventional media or obviously digitally. So let's get into it. So here we are in Tayasui Sketches. I obviously chose Tayasui because it is the perfect app for painting live, or drawing live, or in situ, on site, whatever you want to call it, because there's not a lot of controls to think about. You can just get on with the sketch. So I opened it up, chose the pencil and started drawing, and I knew I hadn't got very long for this, maybe 20-30 minutes or something like that. So I just chose the pencil and started sketching. And you'll notice that in this one I don't go in and start shading straight away. I really am just looking at doing a pencil outline, and I had to get these figures in really quick because obviously they were moving. Sort of some people came into view, then another one would walk past, and I sort of built up the scene, and I kind of left the legs very sparse, because by the time I kind of drawn the tops of the people, I sort of had to get it in my head where they were once they'd moved on, and I just sort of put some rough lines in and guides, and came up with this little scene. So that's why they're so loose and quickly sketched in. So I'm carrying on with the drawing. There was a harbour wall, I guess, in the distance, so that's the horizontal lines is the harbour wall. You can see the sort of stones on the top of the wall, and the actual water is both sides of the wall. So I guess it's more of a kind of a break for the stop the sort of waves of the sea rocking the boats too much. I put a little bit of shading in on the windows there, not too much. I was talking about the harbour wall like I knew what I was on about, and I you know, I live in the absolute centre of the UK, so you know, I've very hardly ever seen a boat in my life, and only see the sea obviously in the summer holidays when I go to the coast. So sort of very limited shading here. I just sort of get the darkest darks in and a little bit of shading on the windows, but nothing to do with the sort of shading of the buildings and things. Obviously, looking down this street, the perspective was quite tricky to get right, so you'll see me sort of adjusting things quite often. But it really is good practice to sort of study perspective and buildings. And the way I do it, I sort of get the bigger shape in. Then when I'm putting the windows in, I will eye each window up and physically, when I say measure, I don't sort of hold my pencil up like that, or anything like that, but I kind of mentally judge the distance between the windows and the height of the windows. And so sort of in that middle building, the window, I noticed that it sort of started, the top of it was almost level with the top of the roof line that you can see disappearing behind the building, and the bottom of it was just below the other window to the right of it. And so I'm sort of looking all the while at the position of the windows, so it looks like I'm not measuring anything, but I am mentally, I'm sort of looking really close and making lots of observations. So half the time of the drawing is really just looking and observing what I'm doing. And here you can see I used the trick where I sort of put two diagonal lines in for the perspective and then erase them. So that's another thing you can do. I don't kind of put in a vanishing point and do all of the lines going to the vanishing point and then start drawing from there, but quite often I will put in a few lines just to give me an idea of what that perspective would be. So just getting in the steps of the door there. So I'm sort of putting a little bit of detail in and shading that in, because the blacks I did put in with the pencil, strengthening up the shadows in the windows, but still nothing on the buildings at all. I think that the buildings were the most fun bit to do, and then I needed to move it along a bit too, because I wanted to put more of the structure to the left in the picture. As you can see, I've kind of put in a lot more detail into this than I normally would, in as much that I've got sort of vertical and horizontal bars in the window. I don't normally do that. So the bulk of this piece is done with the outline pencil work, the drawing. That has taken by far the longest, and the actual, I'll say colouring it in, but I mean shading, adding the tonal contrast with the watercolour wash, took minutes really. It was all about the drawing, sort of making sure I was happy where everything was, got everything in the right place. I'm just wondering where I'm at now. Oh yeah, I'm putting in the bench. So that was a little bit tricky as well. I found that I drew that a little bit too small, and then I had to enlarge it a bit later on. I think at this point my concentration was going a little bit. At the beginning I was really sort of focused and sharp, and the longer I was drawing, I'm knocking on a bit, and I was getting a bit tired perhaps. So I wasn't really concentrating and looking so closely at the bench with the rest of the property, so I did have to sort of enlarge that a bit. And I do like using the cutting out tool to enlarge that, because that would have been really a bit of a pain to have to redraw all of that. But that comes a little bit later on. I'm not sort of going in. There was lots of little things stuck to the walls, and I think there were keys that these are sort of rented cottages where people could get the key out of the cottage. So there's these little black boxes everywhere. So I didn't draw them in. I decided to add a little bit of shade into the people with a pencil. I realised I'd made a little bit of a mistake with the pavement at the bottom. Corrected that. Put a bit of a path in. So this is sort of leading me into the sketch now. Put a few of those cobbles in. Not all of them as always, just a few, just to give an indication. Here we go. Just resizing it slightly. So I'm putting this window in, and that's when I realised that I started to look again that bench wasn't quite big enough, so I did enlarge it a little bit. Getting the rest of the windows in, and it's sort of, you don't know when to stop. I could go right to the edges with a sketch, but I don't think I've ever mentioned this before. I don't like to sort of, when I'm sketching, I don't like to go right to the edge. I like to leave white space around the sketch. That's just something I like to do. So here we go. Now I'm going in with a watercolour brush, and you can see I'm putting on really delicate washes first of all. So I created a new layer, and I put it below the pencil layer, and then I realized that I'd actually forgot to change to the new layer, so I had to undo it all again. And then I felt that I was putting too much of a wash on to start with, so I sort of deleted that. But what I'm doing, I'm putting the wash on, and then you can see I use the eraser to just lift it out within those the lines, the pencil lines. And I use the blending stump as well to soften off edges. You can see I'm using it there on the sea in the background. And then I start putting in the roofs. And at this point, I was quite happy how it's going, but I'm just feeling it was all. It's still not quite. There's not enough contrast going in there. But see how quickly I can start getting dark tones in, which would have taken me a lot longer with a pencil. So I'm just working over the whole of the paper, making sure I've got sort of the dark tones over every area. Really, I use the eraser to lift out the odd highlights on the cobblestone. Then I create a new layer, and then I'm starting to add more colour. Sorry, more tone, not colour. To sort of make those buildings look as though they're slightly in shadow, and then the area of it is exposed to more light. Then another layer, really adding dark tones now, really making it pop to just sort of make the whole thing a lot more vibrant just by adding those really dark tones. And this is done in minutes, so it really is a big time saver. And I used to do this a lot when I was sketching with pencils. So there we go, that is how to quickly shade a drawing using the watercolour pencils just with black and white. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, big thumbs up as always is much appreciated, and if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, because I've got lots of videos like this and I would love to be sharing them with you. So hopefully I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.